Hi everyone, and welcome back to our series on how to edit videos using DaVinci Resolve. And what this is really kind of an over-the-shoulder look at how I put together a short documentary, kind of a short story, using the tools of DaVinci Resolve. So if you're brand new to editing, this is a good series to watch. However, you probably should take a look at the first 7 videos in this series before you watch this one. And so if you just found this video on YouTube, what I'll do is I'll put a link to the playlist for this series in the description below, and that way you can have the opportunity to see all the videos that lead up to today's presentation. In our last video, we got started on this edit. So we got the first few clips on our timeline. We added some graphics. And today, I think what we're going to do is start by taking a look at our music. We placed some music on the timeline down here. Now, I've already made some adjustments to this audio track. You may notice that, well, let's just play it here. And checking out the audio meters over here, we'll see that they're kind of peaking at around minus 10 dB. But you notice just right there that the volume of the music went way down. And we can see that demonstrated here. We see we have a node point established here, and we've brought our track right down. And that's what causes the audio track to reduce in volume. How do we do that? If you're brand new to editing, you might wonder, well, how can we do that? Let's just maybe delete this track. And here is the actual piece of music as it comes from my music provider. And this is often the case with music that you get, the licensed music that you get online. You'll notice from the waveform that it's really too loud for digital audio. Let's just listen to it as it comes in. We can check our meters over here. They're peaking into the red. And whenever you see red on your meters, you know that you're in trouble. It may actually sound okay on your system, the speaker system that you have, and the way DaVinci is handling that audio, it might sound fine. But if you were to export this and send it out to a variety of users, some people, as they played it on their systems, the audio would actually start to distort on their system and sound bad. And you don't want your videos sounding bad. And so you never want to see that peaking into the red. It's okay maybe occasionally to see a little bit of red, but ideally you want to peak right here. If you look over at the audio meters, you want it peaking at minus 10. So how do we bring down the audio? Well, if we took a closer look at our audio track, you'll see that there is a line going all the way through the audio track. It's a little bit hard to see, but as you get your mouse close to it, you see that your mouse cursor changes from the arrow to a little up and down arrow. And so if I was to click down with my left mouse right now, you'll see that I'm actually grabbing that line. And as I pull my mouse down, I'm actually going to be reducing the volume of the entire track. If we were to reduce this, we'll see that we're reducing the volume to the entire track at once. We could increase it if we wanted to by pushing it up. But for our purposes today, let's just first of all start by having our entire piece peaking at about minus 10 dB. Okay, that's about what we want. Remember that when you send your video out and say it's going to be played in front of a large group on a large screen, the projectionist is going to set the volume for the house audio based on the first few seconds of your video. And so the first few seconds of your video are quite critical in helping the projectionist get a good audio level. And so starting out with about minus 10 dB gain, is good. But now when we start to hear her voice, the voice of a person being interviewed, we want to be able to reduce the volume of the music so that we can hear her speaking more clearly. the music kind of takes a back seat, and now we're focusing in on the voice of the person being interviewed. So how do we do that? We want to keep the volume of that first 2 bars there at minus 10 dB, but now we want to reduce it. And occasionally we might want to bring the volume of the music track up again. So how can we adjust just parts of the audio track? Well, what we need to do is on the Mac, go to that point where we want to start reducing the volume of the audio track, and using the Option key, press down, then do your left mouse click, and you'll see that it leaves a little red dot there. We call this a node. And then just go further down the timeline and do the same operation again with the Option key held down. Click again right on that line that we saw earlier. You know, where your mouse turns into an up and down arrow. That's what's going to leave a node. And once you've got that second node there, now you can release the Option key and you can just grab that node and start dragging that down. And you'll see that while the first section stays the same at minus 10 dB, now what comes after that point is going to be reduced in volume. So let's take a listen again. And if you think that the volume's not coming down fast enough or it's coming down too fast, well, you can go back to that red node and make an adjustment just by sliding along with your mouse or bringing it back. So according to your taste of how slowly or how fast that volume should come down, you can make an adjustment there with that. And then if there's some point along the way, and we'll probably come to one of these points where we want to bring the music up again just for kind of a little emotional effect, well, then it's just a matter of, again, with your Option key down, place some more nodes, and then just bring the volume up for that little part. And we'll probably do that somewhere along the edit, maybe several times. But just so you know how to do that now, there you have it. All right, well, I think the next thing we want to bring in is our voiceover talent. All right, here we have it here, and I believe I found that take 2 was better, so we'll use that. However, let's maybe, for this part of the edit, we'll get rid of the inspector, and we'll be able to have 2 monitors this way, the preview monitor and the actual record monitor. And this way we can kind of pick the parts that we want to use as we need them. So let's just play this voiceover track.
I was born right here in this village in 1950. My father was a rich man. We had camels, cattle, sheep, and goats.
Well, let's just take that much. So let's do an out point here and an in point there. And now we can just drag and drop that right onto our voiceover track. Earlier in a previous lesson, we determined that audio track 3 would be our voiceover track, and so let's just pop it on there. We might just pause here for a moment and talk a little bit about why I am using a voiceover rather than subtitles. And this is kind of a debate between filmmakers as to which is more appropriate. Should you use subtitles or a voiceover? Well, I think there are pros and cons between the two. And while subtitles can be appropriate, almost mandatory in some situations, where you want to be very technical, where it's scientific, where you want to have your video open to peer reviews and to make sure it's authentic and that type of thing. But if you are just doing a short documentary, a kind of a storytelling situation where you're going more for emotional impact as opposed to a more technical video, then I kind of prefer the voiceover, especially here in North America where people aren't really used to reading subtitles anyways. It's more impactful, more emotional. You can draw your audience in with a good voiceover talent. And so if your video is more based on just telling a story or perhaps a fundraising video where you want your video to have an emotional appeal, then I find that having a voiceover track is better than having subtitles when you're using a foreign language. But what I do like to do is have the original language heard first so that you know that the person is speaking a foreign language. Otherwise, the viewer might get the idea that, oh, this video, this lip sync is way off, and you don't want that. So you want people to understand that the person is speaking a foreign language, but to help them get the understanding of the video, we've provided a voiceover translation. So let's hear her voice first. And we could maybe even bring her volume up a little bit. This is her volume here. Let's just bring that up a little bit. But here we can bring her volume down, so using the Option key again. Let's bring hers down so that hers is not conflicting too much with the actual voiceover. And so now we can bring the voiceover in right after we reduce the volume, so it goes something like this.
I was born right here in this village in 1950.
All right, we see that A3 looks like it's set to stereo, and the voice talent recorded it just to mono, so let's change that. Right-click in this area here and change track to mono. And so now she should be on both speakers.
I was born right here in this village in 1950. My father was a rich...
Now the spacing here that the voice talent gave us when she did the recording is probably just a bit too much. So let's tighten that up a bit. And we can do that first of all by splitting the clip to make two parts to it and then just make an adjustment. Now I have set my keyboard shortcut for this operation of splitting a clip to be just one single key, the C key. So I can do this very quickly and efficiently. And once I make the split, I can just roll the end of the second half back by grabbing the end of it and moving it back with my mouse. And then I just need to slide it together. And now there's not so much dead space here.
In 1950. My father was a rich man.
That sounds more natural to have it like that. But now we see it doesn't go at all with the actual interview.
Right here in this village in 1950. My father was a rich man.
You know, it seems a little odd to have the voice talent talking when the person is not. However, because we know that we're going to cover this with illustrative shots and we're no longer going to see her not talking, it's okay. So we're getting the timing right more based on just how it feels when the person is telling the story.
I was born right here in this village in 1950. My father was a rich man.
Let's maybe go and grab that first clip and pop it on so you see what I mean. Let's bring it into our preview monitor and take a look at it. Yeah, it's pretty stable all the way. Let's maybe just grab it about there, pop out there with an out point, and drag it down to our timeline. Now, because we've set this up, our B-roll shots are going to have an audio on the A2, where we've set our ambient audio. It doesn't look like this clip has any audio, so it wouldn't necessarily needed to come down there. We could undo this and just select our icon here that looks like a film strip and just drag that down, and then we have no audio to worry about.
This village in 1950. My father was a rich man. We had camels.
You can see that even though the person who's being interviewed isn't talking, it's not going to be bothersome because we're covering it with some B-roll. Let's maybe just listen to this again. I think we could bring the voiceover in just a touch sooner. Let's listen. Yeah, we're hearing her voice quite a bit. It's establishing the fact that she's talking. I think we could bring the voiceover talent in right about here. So let's do that. Let's just slide this across so it's coming right to when the voiceover talent starts. Grab those two clips and slide it back.
I was born right here in this village.
Now we might want to reduce her volume just a little bit sooner now. Let's pull this back. And now we see a little bit more of her talking.
I was born right here in this village in 1950.
All right, I think that we could just continue to add some more of the voiceover. And what I'll usually do at this point is edit on the timeline. Some people prefer to edit using this system here where they're previewing and setting in and out points up here and then dragging and dropping the pieces onto the timeline. But I kind of prefer just to edit on the timeline. And so I'm just going to drag this out and we'll edit this as we go. Let's see what the next statement is.
There was a lot of rain, a lot of green pasture. There was plenty of meat, plenty of milk. My job as a young girl was to look after the goats and milk them every day.
All right, we see that the person being interviewed is not really timing up at all with the voiceover. And that's going to happen. You just have to expect that. When I did the interview, I was working with her for probably an hour. If your interviews usually last 30 minutes, well, when you're working with a translator, the interview is an hour long. And yet the actual condensed story is only about 6 minutes, 7 minutes. So what you need to do as an editor is choose those portions of the interview that is going to go the best with the statements we're hearing in the final story. This story, of course, went through a lot of stages. After I got the interview, we transcribed the English translation that we got right on the spot. But if we would have used everything that the translator said, that would have been, a 15, 20-minute video, and most people just can't sit that long. And so we condensed all of those statements down to about a 6-minute piece. And so what you need to do as a video editor is find portions of that interview that are going to go well with the final story as it is told by our voiceover talent. And here is the interview over here I have. And as we continue to piece this edit together, we'll continually be going back to this long interview and finding those sections that we'll put back into the final edit that go with the story as it was finally developed over the whole course of the production. But for now, let's just go back and maybe add some more of the story with the voice talent.
I was born right here in this village.
And just notice that the voiceover is a little bit hot too. We say hot when we start seeing the red there. I've told people in the past it's just a little too hot, and they wonder what I mean by that. When you see the red in your audio meters, it's hot. And we can see even visually here, it is kind of peaking. That first little one is just a little high. And we see the red over here. We don't want that. So let's bring that down a bit.
Born right here in this village in 1950.
The rest is pretty good. It's just that first one that's still a little bit of a problem. So let's add a node here and maybe one right here and just bring that little first statement down a bit.
I was born right here in this village in 1950. My father was a rich man.
All right, and we see that seems to be kind of the trend for the whole recording. So let's bring the whole track down just a little bit. And there may be places where we have to bring it back up again, but as we start out, let's just bring this down so it kind of matches the visual of the audio in the last little section. Let's try that and see how it looks.
My father was a rich man.
Yeah.
We had camels, cattle,
peaking at about -10.
There was a lot of rain, a lot of green pasture.
So that's good.
Plenty of meat.
Now, what about the timing?
My father was a rich man. We had camels, cattle,
good there.
Sheep, and goats. There was a lot of rain.
Maybe it could be tightened up just a little bit there. So another way to do it is after you've made the split is just point to the clip to the right there, and then just, maybe we should open this up a little bit more, and just grab it with your left mouse button and start dragging it to the left. And by doing that, you're overwriting. So now the overall effect is that we've shortened the duration there.
And goats. There was a lot of rain, a lot of green pasture.
Well, that might be okay. So let's start putting down some more B-roll here. She talks about camels and cattle. I think we've got some cattle and sheep here. Kind of a funky stock media clip that we found.
Goats.
Now, these two clips visually just don't go together well at all. But let's not worry about that right now. In our next lesson, we'll get into color grading, color correcting, color affecting. So we'll kind of even out all of these shots coming from different stock providers. Now, if you're brand new to video, you should know that there are a lot of great websites out there that provide a lot of wonderful stock media for almost next to nothing. For like a $500 membership for a whole year, you can download as many as you want. It's unlimited. And so if you are getting into video editing, doing short documentaries, you'll want to check out those websites. I'll maybe put a list in the description below of places you can check out. And it's really going to help you fill those holes and add illustrative material to what your interviewee is talking about. So let's see what...
Cattle, sheep, and goats.
Now we can see that there's a little bit of audio on that track. Let's just maybe get rid of it all. Just drag it right down. And our next shot is...
There was a lot of rain, a lot of green pasture.
There was a lot of rain, a lot of green pasture. I think I've got a great video clip here of drone going over a green village in Africa, in Kenya. And so I think we'll use that here. Maybe pick it up about here and go out about there. We can always adjust it on the timeline if it's not the exact length that we want. But let's just drag it down and place it right where our cursor ended there. And
a lot of green pasture. There was plenty of meat, plenty of milk.
Okay, so that wasn't the right spot. Let's listen here again.
There was a lot of rain.
And so that's about where we want it there. And again, by just grabbing that clip, by clicking on it with your left mouse button and pulling it over by dragging your mouse, you're bringing it to the point where you want it placed. So now that should be about right.
We had camels, cattle, sheep, and goats. There was a lot of rain.
Could even come back just a little bit more, I think.
Sheep and goats. There was a lot of rain, a lot of green pasture. There was plenty of meat, plenty of milk.
Okay, I think we need a new shot right about there. We've talked about the green pastures. So there was plenty of meat. Let's see, I think I've got a good shot here of a young girl holding a baby goat. Yeah, this is the one I think I wanted. Now, it's kind of wobbly there in parts, but I think right about there is good. And we see that this clip doesn't have any audio, which is good. Sometimes the audio can be very distracting and you have to bring it down anyway. So we find that a lot of the clips that come from stock media sites don't have audio. And if you need to add audio to get the effect that you're looking for, then you add audio yourself with sound effects and that type of thing. But for our purposes, we're just going to pop this into place and see how it fits.
There was plenty of meat.
Oh, that's where we wanted to place it. So let's go back and slide it over.
There was plenty of meat, plenty of milk. My job as a young girl was to look at...
Now we see the video is kind of moving around there. It's being handheld. And some people are fine with that. Some people feel like it just gives a more real effect. I kind of am a fan of being very stable. I like when video clips are shot on a tripod. But in certain situations like this, where you're inside a animal corral and there's lots of things happening all around you, it's not always the best to have a tripod either. So I can understand why this is kind of wobbly. We can fix that using a stabilizer. Let's maybe just take a quick look at that. Let's go back and put our video inspector on. And with the clip selected, let's go scroll down and find stabilization. And let's see how it looks by just hitting the stabilize. It's going to go through, it's going to analyze it. It has zoomed in a little bit into the clip, so you lose some definition, but I believe that this is a 4K clip anyways, and so we're not going to lose any resolution. We can confirm that to be true by, with it still selected, going to our video inspector and going over to File here, and we see that it is not. Okay, so we want to be careful a little bit how much we zoom into it before we start noticeably seeing some resolution and artifacts.
There was plenty of meat, plenty of milk. My job as a young...
So still a little wobbly, but better. And it's the shot is a little dark, but we're going to fix that in our next lesson when we take a look at color grading, so let's not worry about that right now. All right, so let's go for another clip there. I think I've got another stock media here of a girl milking the goats. Here it is. So right about there. Take it out about there and pop it in.
My job as a young girl was to look after the goats and milk them every day.
Okay, that could be a little bit longer. So we just need to grab the end of it and slide it out just a little bit.
Milk them every day.
Again, there's probably just a little bit too much gap in the voiceover, so we'll split that and just drag it over.
Every day. We would make cream, butter, curds, and yogurt. We were even able to grow sorghum.
So now we've been watching B-roll for quite a bit now. It's probably time to come back and see the person being interviewed as she talks. And so here she is here. Let's just drag this over and find an area where she's talking about what it used to be like when she was a girl. Now this can be a little bit tedious and a little bit tricky, finding that right spot again where she's talking about when she was a little girl, and specifically talking about the things that we ended up using when we edited the story together. Okay, so here's the section here. Let's just take the whole part for now. We probably won't use it all. Let's just get our time cursor to the beginning of this and do our split clip. And take it to the other end, do another split clip, and then select that portion, do a copy using Command C, and now we can go back to our edit and place that on the timeline. Just for now, let's put it out here. And one little trick about doing a copy paste is that DaVinci will do the paste. It'll drop the paste right where you have the timeline cursor, unless you have an endpoint set somewhere. And that looks like what's happened here. Let's do an undo and set an endpoint here. And now let's do our paste, and it comes to where we want it. And now we can fine tune this a little bit.
We would make cream, butter.
So her voice is now too high. It's interfering with the voiceover. So we're going to bring her voice down so we just barely hear it in the background there. But the voiceover is more prominent.
We would make cream, butter, curds, and yogurt.
Bring it down just a bit more.
We were even able to grow sorghum.
So we've had a chance to briefly come back and see the person being interviewed. Now, at this point, because I don't speak her language, I'm not exactly sure that what she is saying right at this exact point is the same as what the voiceover person is saying. You know, whenever you do a project like this, you're going through a number of steps. Right on the spot, our translator gave a pretty good translation to English, but still English wasn't his first language. And so it's kind of broken English, but we get the gist of what she's saying. And from that transcription of the broken English, we put that into a more proper English. And so you're never really going to have an exact science here of the voiceover saying the exact same thing as what she said. We do the best we can, but it's not always going to be exact. And that being said, when I'm coming back to the interviewee, I will kind of look for a portion that kind of fits what is being said the best. And so we might want to experiment a little bit and try different portions of the clip where she's talking about when she was a girl and see if we can't find a portion where her hand gestures and her voice and her facial expressions kind of match the best with what we ended up with in writing the story. Okay, so I'll just kind of experiment with that a little bit.
Every day. We would make cream, butter, curds, and yogurt.
I think that goes a little better than what we first saw.
We were even able to grow sorghum.
And here we can be back to some illustrative B-roll cover. Got a great shot of some sorghum here that we'll drop on.
We were even able to grow sorghum. That would give us a dry cereal that would last.
So big space there in the narration, and so let's edit that.
That would give us a dry cereal that would last right through the dry season. I remember pouring milk on the cereal. It was delicious.
Here's a nice section here where it's very personal. She's remembering how wonderful it tasted. And so I think it's important to go back to the person being interviewed and find a section here that kind of goes nicely with that sentiment.
I remember pouring milk on the cereal.
However, at this point, she's not talking. The translator is probably translating what she just said. And so we need to find another clip that will work well here. And I think I have it in place here. We'll just drag it over.
I remember pouring milk on the cereal. It was delicious. Life was good. There was never any hunger.
Okay, good. I think just one more thing we'll take a look at here for today's lesson, and that is transitions. Sometimes these types of stories can benefit from a dissolve. At least that's what I like to do. Some people prefer cuts, simple cuts from one clip to the next, just a simple cut like that. But I kind of prefer to have a nice dissolve, a fade, some might call it. So how can we add a transition on these clips? Well, we want to go up to our magic wand and switch our media pool panel to become our effects panel. And here, one of the first things that's available here is video transitions. There's a lot of different types of transitions. All the common transitions are here. For now, just notice that as you go through the various options here, you can get a quick preview of what it's going to look like by selecting any one that kind of has the icon that you're looking for and then just sliding your mouse across, and you'll see what that transition is going to look like. Want a heart? Well, you can slide your mouse across there and see what that transition is going to look like. You know, there's all sorts of brush transitions you could take a look at and find something that kind of gives you that feel that you're going for your video. The one that I like is the cross dissolve. That's just the typical fade from one shot to the next. Now you might notice that there's a little red line beside this particular transition, and it's not showing up on any of the others. And the reason is because I have selected this particular transition to be my default transition. The one that you're going to use the most, you'll want to set up as your default transition. And how you can do that is when you find a transition that you like, just right-click on it and set as standard transition. So for example, if you preferred this blur dissolve, you like that better, you want that to be the transition that you use for almost all your transitions, well, you might want to set that as your standard transition. Notice the little red mark goes up there. And what that means is that now, whatever you have set as your standard transition, you can apply a keyboard shortcut, and you don't have to go up to the effects menu. You could still be in the media pool panel and apply your transition effect without having to do any change up here. And the way that you can apply it just using a keyboard shortcut is just to go and set your mouse right between the two clips that you want to apply the transition, and notice that both sides turn green. It's not just one side or the other, but both sides turn green. And now when you use your keyboard shortcut for the transition, which is Command T, it's going to apply that default transition.
Camels,
So we
cattle,
have the nice
sheep.
dissolve. And so you can just go through and just add them quite quickly. In fact, if you know that you want to apply a dissolve to all 5 of these, you can just lasso all 5, and now when you apply the keyboard shortcut, it's going to apply the dissolve to all of them. So now as we go through, we've got dissolves on all of them. Now you might be wondering what's happened here at this end. It's not dissolving to another clip beside it. Well, what it's going to do is actually dissolve from the lower level of video track and dissolve up to the B-roll clip.
My father was a rich man.
So if you weren't wanting the dissolve at that first one, you can select it and hit the delete key and it's gone. So that first one is a cut
50. My father was a rich man.
rather than a dissolve.
We had camels, cattle, sheep.
Now what if you wanted the dissolve to be a little bit longer? By default, the transitions are set to 1 second. Well, what if you wanted it to be 1.5 seconds? Well, you can stretch it out. Just grab any end of it and you just stretch it out. So now
Camels, cattle,
we've
sheep.
got a much slower fade or dissolve. Now, one thing that you might find happening when you try and do this, we should talk about, is it won't let you. Let's see how that happens. How it happens is if you're trying to dissolve right at the end of the clip. So here's the end of our clip right here. So now when we try to apply the transition with our keyboard shortcut, it's going to give us this little dialog box that says, you don't have enough material here to dissolve into the next clip. You've come to the end of your clip. There's not enough frames here for you to dissolve. And if you see this message, well, you could try trimming clips, but sometimes that can affect all of the clips down the line in a way that you're not expecting or wanting. So I find a much better solution. See, it even adjusted the whole area here. And if you've almost finished your video edit, you don't want the whole timeline to be adjusting just because you want to add a dissolve there. So I find a much better solution is just to cancel here and make the adjustments to the problem clip itself so that you have enough video material to work with to make the actual transition. All right, well, I believe that does it for today's lesson. If you found it helpful, please give it a like. That helps our channel grow, our student family grow. And if you haven't already done so, I invite you to subscribe. In our next lesson, we're going to be talking all about the color correction tools. You notice this one needs a lot of help. And for all of these, we might want to add kind of a feel of historic video, historic media, and kind of give it maybe a sepia tone look. How do we do that? And so we'll take a look at that in our next lesson here at Learning Media Skills. So long for today.